Now we get to the third of our techniques for story analysis. The third thing that you are looking for in the story. It might be there, it might not. In most cases, you are going to find comparison in dreams. In some cases, you're going to find contrast too. You will find comparison because it is at the core of most dream symbolism. What is a metaphor? It is a comparison. What is an exaggeration? It is an exaggerated comparison. So you are looking for the use of comparison in your dreams. Dreams show you one thing and they mean another. They compare the two together. There is some type of a meaningful relationship between them. They can appear to be dissimilar, but they are not necessarily there. I mean, there's a relationship between them. There's a connection between them. They're not necessarily disconnected. They appear to be dissimilar, but there is a connection between them. There is a meaningful relationship between them. Comparison draws attention to itself. We know from the use of exaggeration in dreams. What is one of the reasons why dreams do it? They do it to draw attention. Why do we amplify dream content, or dreams amplify certain content? Because it's trying to draw attention to itself, to that part of the dream. It's saying, focus here because there is something here in the symbolism. It's very important for the overall story. And the dreaming mind is giving you a clue. It's pointing you in the right direction by making certain things stand out to you. It is really good storytelling also, and good storytelling is at the heart of dreaming. Contrast can be used to show you something about yourself that you don't want to know. This is one of the reasons why dreams create contrasts. The stronger the contrast, the more likely there is that it's deliberate and it's to show you something. It could be about your life, a person in your life. It could be about yourself. There might be something about yourself that you don't want to know. The ego is legendary for filtering out or blocking out the things that it does not want to know about itself. And when it does block those things out, they become part of the shadow side of the ego. And if you go into some of my other lectures about the shadow side of the ego, you find out that it is a potentially dangerous thing, and that it is a really good idea to accept everything and know everything about yourself, to lower the ego barriers and allow yourself to at least see and recognize these things that you think contrast with you, that they're not you, but they actually are you. I have an example from my own dream life. I was in a scene where I was in a restaurant and I was seated next to a obesely overweight man. There was a contrasting character next to him, which was this very, very skinny man. The obese man was gobbling down spaghetti one at a time, just sucking this stuff down. And I am kind of repulsed by the scene. The skinny man isn't really doing anything. He's not drawing any attention to himself. And their waitress comes up to the table. And she starts telling me about that she's tried to tell me in the past about my past lives, but that I would react by becoming angry. And boom, in the dream, I remember other dreams where I've had this waitress character in it. And yes, she had tried to tell me in the past about my past lives. And interesting is that at that time of my life, I was exploring this subject. It was fairly new to me. I'd read a book by Brian Weiss, who is a psychiatrist who has observed evidence of reincarnation of past lives in clinical settings with his patients. And this was, to me, was just fascinating. It was taking it beyond a religious discussion of reincarnation and bringing it into the more of the scientific or psychiatric side of it. So that was able to end run around my programming as a traditional Christian back in the day, where ideas such as reincarnation, well, that's a Buddhist thing, So I had become interested in the subject. I wanted to find out if it was true. I wanted to see it through personal experience. So the waitress comes along and she does her thing. Well, now we need to understand the man. For one, the dream is showing a sharp contrast between him and the skinny man, but I'm also feeling a contrast between me and him. There's this sort of repulsive thing going on in the dream. And boy, is that a sign to focus there, because there is something about yourself that the dream is trying to show you. And in this case, it was my inflated ego. The dream was trying to show me that my ego had become inflated. I was in this trip at the time. I was learning so much. I was deep into Carl Jung, and I'd gone from Jung into his contemporaries, and I was into all this esoteric knowledge. I was just sucking it down, man. Just like the man sucking down the spaghetti. The spaghetti symbolizes lines of thought, and I was sucking down the lines of thought, but I wasn't really chewing it or digesting it, and my ego was inflating because I realized that I knew things that were rare. There were not very many people on the face of the earth that knew the things that I knew. It wasn't that they couldn't understand it, they just hadn't been exposed to the information. So the skinny man is there in the scene to enhance the idea of contrast, which I then also feel about myself with the obese man. And it's all coming back to this idea that there is something about myself that I don't want to know. And it is getting in the way of the ultimate goal expressed through the waitress, is that I want to know about my past lives. Well, if ego gets involved in that process, then it's going to perhaps lead you down the wrong paths. If you get into understanding past lives, you have to be absolutely dedicated to the truth, and that it can't be something that is serving your ego. It can strengthen your ego, but not serve it. There's a difference. Contrast in a dream can also mean that the idea of being far apart on something, such as we're far apart on the issue, or we're far apart in how we see things. We're far apart emotionally. Contrast can be used to express these ideas. Like in my example with the obese man, sharply contrasting dream characters can symbolize polarity in the psyche. But let's go a little further with it. We saw in that example that there was the obese man and the very skinny man. Two sides of the same coin. They are poles, as in polarity, electricity. It has negative and positive polarity. Well, in your psyche, deep down inside of it, are these things called archetypes, and you can look it up in the Dream Interpretation Dictionary. I highly encourage you to do it right now or soon after. Look up archetypes, the entry for archetypes. The dream shows you archetypes as polarity. It's usually two dream characters, and they have some kind of sharp contrast between them. For example, one is very young and one is very old. I have found this archetype appear frequently in the dreams of young people who are concerned about having all of the time to do what they want to with their life. They have a head full of dreams, as in ideas about, hey, I want to do these things before I leave this life. So the dream shows this sharp contrast, okay? There's the young person in them who's pushing forward, full of life. It's full of energy. They're expanding. And then there's the other side of it, which is the older person who's going to take everything that they experience and they're going to digest it. And there's a deeper process that's going to happen in the second half of their life when they get older. And then at the end, when they get really old, oftentimes the dreams show them as like a very young child, 5, 6, 7 years old, and a very old person, like great grandmother, great grandfather age. use my link that I have on here, dreams123.net, and go to that long URL. You can also just use the search box on the right. If you go to the front page of dreams123.net or any page on the site, there's a search box and you can put in opposites attract. It will take you to that lesson on how dreams use contrasting characters to create symbolism.